good evening and welcome to the February 5th, 2025 Council of Governments meeting. If you could please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Well, first, I want to welcome all the new members. Welcome back, Scott, and welcome, Trevor. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome, Trevor. Welcome, Scott.
Okay, and then just for new people in the room, how this works is we run the COG meeting. If we need to take a break, we'll take a break, but we go right into the CTA meeting and call for order on that. So just so everyone's on the same page, because we got a lot of new faces in the room today. All right. Okay, on the agenda, we've got consent next. Tim's not gonna call. Okay. We've got consent agenda, so we have multiple items on the consent agenda. Are there any board members that wish to pull a consent agenda item?
No, my questions were answered earlier.
Okay. Any other board members? Okay. Okay, are there any public comments?
They can't see the board.
Okay, seeing none in the room and Aaron, none online, we'll move it back to the board for a motion to approve the consent agenda item.
I'll move the consent.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Pat, moved by Gary, second by Pat, all in favor? Aye. So what is that? 601. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to regular agenda, which is, next is public comment. Comment should be limited to items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not posted on the agenda. Public comment is 5 minutes per person. I will start with in-room public comment. Seeing none, I'll move over to online.
No comments.
Seeing none online, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Next on the agenda is Caltrans report, and we have Lagoria here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gregoria Ponce. I'm Caltrans Acting Deputy for Planning, Local Assistance, and Environmental, and it's a pleasure to be here. I have two items, very short. The first item is we recently released the statewide, 2024 statewide rail plan. It's a plan that creates zero-emission, fully interconnected rail and transit network as part of California's ambitious climate change goals. It's a rail network that seeks interconnectivity with local systems. Sorry. Water. Thank you. The plan envisions a direct capital investment of approximately $307 billion with an estimated economic return of over $537 billion by 2050. It's also expected to create 900,000 full-time jobs for construction, maintenance, and operation industries, representing a significant boost to Caltrans' economy. The second item I have is a funding opportunity. Federal Highway Administration on the Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation Program, known as PROTECT, for federal funding. There's approximately $876 million available. The deadline is February 24th, 2025. And it's intended to strengthen surface transportation to be more resilient to natural hazards and extreme weather events such as flooding and wildfires and other natural disasters through support of planning activities, resilience improvements, community resilience, as well as evacuation route development. And those are the only two items I have. If anyone has any questions for me.
Any board member have questions? Gary and Scott, you want to start with Scott?
Yes. On the
Mic on, please.
Thank you.
On the funding opportunity, would something like fire safe, preparing a neighborhood for fire safe be appropriate for that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Firewise.
Or Firewise, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Cost-saving transportation, you're talking about? Your second item was cost-saving for transportation?
That's the PROTECT program. It's a Federal Highway Administration funding. It's a it's a 3-year program, and so they're calling for applications under the Federal Highway Administration PROTECT program.
Yeah. Okay. I was hoping that since it says cost saving, that we would lower the 10% fare match for our public transportation.
Oh,
That would be cost saving for us.
that's a sentiment well shared, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from the board? Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have item number 15, and before we go into that, I just, since we have new board members and new individuals joining the meeting, CIP reports are updated to the board on a quarterly basis, but we do keep this item on as a standing item, should there be any update that need to be given by the jurisdiction, city or county. So there's no requirement other than the quarterly to report out. So any questions on that from the electeds? No? Okay. We'll move on to city and county report. And since I see our new public works director for the county here in the room, I will start out with the county. This is Micah, everyone. He just joined us, what, last week?
I've been here about a week now, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the new Public Works Director, Micah Martin. Just to introduce myself to the board here, I moved up here from Southern California to be with the county and to work for this great organization. I'm very excited about the potential and all the opportunity here, and I love to get projects done, so I think we're going to have a great partnership. So looking forward to all that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will do city report. Lenny? No, it's okay. You don't have to.
No, I think that was, we were only gonna do it every other month or every third month or something like that.
Yeah, quarterly.
Quarterly, yeah.
I just want to make sure I don't skip any over anybody. Okay. Then we will move on to item, let me back up. Is there any public comment? So Monica doesn't remind me, forgive me. Nope, and then online and, okay. We'll move on to item number 16, which is the minute order approving the appointment of the chair and vice chair for calendar year 2025. At this time, I will turn it over to the executive director, Melissa Radjo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is to appoint a new chair and vice chair for the calendar year of 2025. So I will hand it over to the council. They make the motion and vote on the new chair and vice chair.
I would like to say, first off, that I would personally, and I would make the motion if the council agrees, to keep this year Amanda chair because the Wagon Trail project that's going on. We're supposed to finish it off this year. She's been super involved in it. COG is involved in it. The county's involved in it. And so I would like her see her remain at least through that. We're supposed to finish again this year by the end of the construction season this year. Actually, they're saying June or July. So that's what I would like to say. And then I think Tim is vice chair. He's not here tonight. I would just assume that is to keep Tim as vice chair, and then we'll move on next year. That's my comments on it. I don't know what everybody else is. If that's okay, then I would make a motion to keep. I'm sorry,
Susan.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I would support that because I think continuity as we go through completing that project is very important, really.
Okay. Well, I'll make the motion to
I
keep
gotta do,
Amanda as chair and Tim as vice chair.
before we move on, public comment. Seeing none in the room and shaking her head, none online, we'll move it back to the board. So there's a motion on the table.
I'll second.
second by Pat. Do we need to do roll call for this? No? Okay. Okay. With that, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So 601. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully we'll finally get this. Okay, we'll move on to item number 17, which is the draft Calaveras County Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Implementation Plan Presentation. Erin.
Okay.
We'll turn it over to Ann, who would take the lead on this and introduce to the presenters in the room.
Good evening, Board. What we have for you tonight is the draft Calaveras County Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Plan. COG has led the planning effort for this on behalf of the City of Angels Camp and the County of Calaveras. The focus being charging station infrastructure for the local government fleets. And so we have identified the structure and the sites and then the roadmap towards installing the actual infrastructure. Tonight we have DKS Associates. We have Mike Hewson here at the podium. Behind him is Gabir Antal, who was the project manager on this, to give the presentation and then hear your comments and questions afterwards. We are presenting the draft tonight, so between now and say the end of February, if you guys have any questions, comments, we will take them from you, incorporate them, address them in a final draft, and bring that back to the board. And with that, Mike, you're all set. Is it working for you?
Well,
Oh.
there we go. Great. Good evening. Thank you very much for having us. This is the draft document right here, and I'm going to kind of cover the very highlights of it. There's a lot of content in here. It's a very dense document. It's been a pleasure to work on this project with Erin, who's doing a fabulous job as the project manager for the COG. What I'm going to cover is what's here on the agenda, briefly covering on the team, what the regulations are. So the content of this plan basically is everything that is needed to be known to basically install charging infrastructure for both the city and the county's fleets, with including our specific recommendation, how we prioritized, and then just very, very high level overview of some of the content. So this is the team. As Erin mentioned, it's both the city and the county. Several of us from DKS Associates worked on this, including Gabir, who's the project manager, and did the actual engineering out on site. I oversee everything, and of course, Stefan in my office helped do a lot of the analysis. So in terms of the regulations, this is driven by regulations at the federal level, at the state level, and the local level, and there's a whole chapter that documents what those regulations are and how those apply, and why the county needs to address them. The most important of these here in California is the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule, which mandates electrification of medium and heavy-duty vehicles. That's anything of like an F-250 and bigger, essentially has to be electrified over a certain time frame. And there's a couple of slides that explain that. And then there's some local regulations and policies that we've tried to address, as well as some federal as well. So as I mentioned, ACF, Advanced Clean Fleet, is the big one. There are two different methods for compliance, and this document outlines both of them and to present kind of what those are. There's the model year schedule and a milestone method, but ultimately they have slightly different compliance pathways, and this document explains how that works and how that could work for both the deployment of electric vehicles and also the charging infrastructure to support those vehicles.
Got a question?
Sure.
Before you move off of this frame, going back to that slide.
There.
Okay, it says 100% starting in 2027.
Yes.
Then it says, because of Calaveras is low population, we're permitted to delay implementation until 2027. There's no delay. Everybody's 2027.
Well, so implementation is when you're replacing vehicles, you can keep replacing vehicles with ICE until 2027, at which point then you have to switch to EVs. The idea is to buy a little time for the industry to catch up.
So we may delay, that's my point. We may be able to delay, but still come 2027, we have to be all electric, buying all electric.
For medium and heavy duty vehicles.
Moving forward from 27 years, and that also based on how you follow, is the replacement cycle or the milestone? So if you see on the table, when it goes to 2027, it's a 10%, milestone. So either the 10% of the total fleet that has to be electrified moving forward has to be electrified. And that means from 2027 onwards, 100%.
Yeah,
10%.
yeah. Okay, all right, thank you.
And it's by
I just wanted
subclass of
The
vehicle.
subclasses. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, I see down below, but I just wanted to get clear. Okay, thank you.
And the regulation's trying to address that not all vehicles are available for every fleet model. So the industry is trying to play catch up with the regulation. Because there's another regulation called Advanced Clean Trucks that sort of creates that is initiated the market that was adopted several years prior to Advanced Clean Fleet.
Which one was ACT went away recently?
I think what you're thinking
How
of,
does that affect this?
well, so a part of ACF was repealed by CARB, which was for the private sector fleets. So private sector fleets no longer have to comply with this timeline, but it still applies to public agency fleets. I think that's probably what you're talking about.
Okay.
Trying to get this thing to go here.
I think it has a delay.
Aaron, is it possible? Oh, there you go. All right. So, want to make sure that's the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So this is, what we want to do is present kind of a high-level overview of the current situation regarding your fleets today. Calaveras County has close to 300 and almost 400 vehicles, which is about 10 times the fleet of Angels Camp. And the vast majority of those are light-duty vehicles that are not addressed by Advanced Clean Fleet. So it's really only about 20% of the fleet that is impacted by that particular regulation. You can start electrifying your light-duty vehicles much sooner because there are many models available today in the marketplace. In fact, if you drove in one, here, I saw your Model 3, is that Caltrans?
That's Caltrans, yeah.
Okay, that's yours. Right. Okay, so anyway, that's an example of a EV that can be electrified. So what this table shows is the breakdown by vehicle by site, because there's many different sites at both the city and the county. And this is the breakdown between light, medium, and heavy duty. In terms of implementation, we've identified a 3-phase implementation strategy, starting with the first phase, which is basically beginning in 2027, and then there'll hopefully be more electric vehicles between 2029 and 2034, and then the rest of the fleet electrification takes place. And what we've done is proposed implementation of the charging infrastructure concurrent with these 3 phases so that you don't have to do it all at once, which allows time to get to do all the different steps that it takes, because there's quite a few different steps in electrifying a fleet. This, again, shows those same phases, breaking down for Calaveras County's fleet by year. The graph on the left shows when those vehicles will need to be replaced, and you can see by the coloring the different types of vehicles. Again, the vast majority of your fleet is light duty, but you've got some older vehicles that need to be replaced earlier on. And then it breaks it down by, again, different phases and different classes on the right side of the slide. And the next slide is for the City of Angels Camp. Same basic concept, but obviously a much smaller fleet. So I want to talk a little bit about the charging strategies. And to do that, I want to first introduce both kinds of chargers that we're recommending, which are basically level 2 chargers, which are 240-volt chargers that can typically charge an electric vehicle overnight, although it can usually do it in much less time than that. But you plug it in at the end of the shift and walk away, and the next morning the vehicle is fully charged. The other way to charge an electric vehicle is much quicker, using what's called a DC fast charger. And those are much more powerful, and that's typically 30 minutes or so to charge an EV. And so ideally, a good fleet plan has a combination of the two, because you want to, the most vehicles can be charged overnight. It's less expensive. It's easy, but sometimes you may need a quick charge. And so we're recommending a combination of the two. And the way we try to do this is optimizing to figure out what's the right ratio, because most electric vehicles have 250 miles range, say, and they're only driving 20 to 30 miles a day, so you don't necessarily need to charge it every day. So what we try to do is figure out what is the right ratio of EVs to chargers. And the reason for that is, as you can see on the graph on the left, that represents a 24-hour day. And so the blue represents when those vehicles are in use, so they can't be being charged because they're being driven. So the gray on the right shows the rest of the time that's available. And then the teal colored represents different amounts of that 16 hours of available charging time that it's needed, so depending on the size of the charger. So ultimately what we've done is some engineering analysis to come up with the optimal quantity and ratio of chargers. And this is kind of what it looks like. So basically what we're recommending in what's shown in the, highlighted in the red, is the ratio of chargers per EV for each of the different sites that Calaveras operates. And it averages out to about 2.6 level 2 chargers per EV. And then this is, again, doing the same thing for the City of Angels Camp, which has a slightly lower ratio of a little less than 2 because it's a smaller facility, or it's a smaller fleet with fewer facilities. So you don't have the benefit of the scale of a larger fleet, such as Calaveras County has. One of the things that we wanted to do was prioritize the sites so that we could give some recommendation. And so we worked very closely with both the county and the city to come up with some criteria by which we would make those recommendations, and that's what's shown here. And then you can see the comments that came in. So what we're trying to do is identify basically the highest priority for sites for each jurisdiction. So this is kind of how we got there. So in case you're curious as to what our reasons were, we worked, again, closely with county and city staff to get input and then work collaboratively, come up with something that made sense. And then this is the sites that we're recommending. So we're standing right in the middle of one of them, which is Government Center. And this actually is sort of two parts to it. So we're using the term the west lot and the east lot just for the purpose of engineering, so that when we're showing the design drawings, and Kabir has them here, what we're specifically recommending, that's what we're referring to. So we're basically focusing on the Government Center, the Sheriff's Office, Colombo, and then the Human Resources Building. So those are the areas that we think are, we being the consultant team plus staff, felt are the highest priority sites. And then this is another way to break down showing the cost. And so what we're showing here is the recommendations of how those 4 sites would be prioritized over time, be implemented over time with the cost. And as you can see, we've broken it down for both the capital cost, or CapEx, as well as the annual operating cost rolled up over that implementation period, so that we have both the OpEx and the CapEx. Because it's really important to think through what the total cost is. And the total cost is about $3.4 million. Again, that's over the next 15 years. So this is a fairly long time frame, but it's split into 3 specific implementation phases. And part of the phasing is also making sure that you get the infrastructure installed for upgrading the electrical systems, because you're going to need more power at certain sites to provide power for those chargers. And that takes time. So these next slides kind of show how we broke it down for each of the different facilities. So if there's any questions on any individual facility, hopefully these slides are self-explanatory, but you can see we went into some fairly detailed analysis on the specific quantity of chargers by charger type and even by charger speed. So again, looking at the duty cycles of those vehicles, as in how many miles they drive, what kind of driving they do, the energy that they require, and therefore coming up with a charging strategy that makes the most sense for each vehicle in the fleet. So this is Colombo. Again, the smaller facilities obviously cost less. In some cases, there is no first phase, and I think we might not even have a last phase. Let's see, this one. Somehow I need to learn how to operate this piece of equipment.
Do you want me to take it back?
There we go. See, I get it, then I get it twice. Yeah, would you mind taking over? Because I don't think my thumb's working very well tonight.
Which site do you want to look at?
Go back one slide.
Sheriff?
No, yeah, you went forward. Go forward 2 slides. Okay, so yeah, this is the last, I think, of the prioritized Calaveras sites, and then we'll go to the next slide.
City of Angels?
Let's see, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Angels Camp. Again, we looked at 3 different sites 3 different prioritized sites for Angels Camp. But yeah, the big one is the City Hall Police Department. It's really two facilities because there's two different fleets there. And then the old Napa building and then Utica Park, which is very small. Next slide. So in terms of prioritization, again, doing 3 different phases with the total cost of, let's see. We don't have a total for that.
879 for CapEx.
879, okay. For the, yeah, total for the CapEx and fourth. My eyes can't see this far. Sorry. Want to go to the next slide? And so again, each of these slides kind of goes through the details of the recommendations by site, and these correspond to the specific number of chargers by location. We have in the plan identified a number of different specific locations within each parking lot, which makes the most sense. Want to go to the next slide? So this is the smallest one. It's Utica. Basically, it's just a single dual port level 2 charger. And next slide. So a big part of this document is, this is called the Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Implementation Plan. It's very implementation focused, ideally to give to a Public Works Director to implement. And, it's very much driving, you're going to need to get these projects into the ground, these chargers designed, and then supporting the recommendations, which is the first half of the document. So about half the document is the plan, and then the second half is the appendices. And as you can see, there's quite a few of them. But the first appendix talks about how we collected the data, and then the stakeholder collaboration engagement, which is the internal process by which we came up with things like the prioritization that I just showed in an earlier slide. And then there's a big discussion on the charging strategies themselves to explain how it works. So it's not just what we're recommending, but how that would actually work. And then I think one of the questions that I'm sure you're very concerned with is how you're going to pay for it. And so Appendix D addresses in detail both the federal and state funding opportunities that you could hopefully leverage to get these projects funded from third parties. And then there's a lot of sort of technical operational guidance, such as the recommendations for charging deployment, how to provide backup power in case your power goes out, and then, of course, the cost estimates and then the basis for those cost estimates. So we detailed in great detail the methodology by which we came up with our costs so that you can understand that. And then we even have some guidance for mechanics, because there's a big difference between operating an internal combustion engine fleet and electric vehicle fleet. And then last but not least, the drawings that Gabir is holding here, which basically are preliminary site layouts. And these are from which we were able to derive the cost estimates. Next slide. So you should also be aware that in addition to the fleet charging, there are existing public chargers available as well. There's no reason that fleet vehicles can't use those chargers. And there are quite a few around the county, so we wanted to include a map of that, just something to be aware of. Question?
What I noticed on this map is, and I know you guys did this prior to them probably being installed, but what's not showing up are the Tesla chargers up at Big Trees.
In Arnold.
Oh.
In Arnold.
Okay, so those are new, because
Yeah.
the red are Teslas. So
That's why I wanted, I
Okay.
think you did this before they were installed. So how many are there? 8?
Yeah.
There's like 8.
okay, well, we can update this map. That's
Okay.
good to know. Thank you for pointing that out. Great. Okay, so that's good. Always want to have more chargers when somebody else is paying for them, right?
Don't quote me on the 8, but
Well, we get the.
there's chargers up there. I thought it was 6 or 8.
Came before the board, remember?
I know. But anyway, there's chargers up there if you want to get the numbers to update this, since this will be a public document for people. Thank you.
Thank you for noting that. We do track, we try to keep track, but as you noted, this plan was developed quite a few months ago. So. And Tesla doesn't tell you when they're building stuff. So it's only what they release to the Alternative Fuel Data Center that is what we're using to track. Next slide. So, any questions?
Okay, at this time, I will turn it over to the board for any questions. He left it on probably so he doesn't forget to turn it back on. Caroline.
Okay, so I put notes in that presentation, so I have to find them as we go. But on the first one, there's a lot of changes going on in the federal government right now. So specifically, like there's things that with EV chargers and green energy and things. So on the federal side, have you seen anything yet changing that would change this drastically?
Interesting question. There's a lot of discussion in our industry right now about how this works. The good news is that the biggest challenge is to NEVI, which is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, and that's focused on public charging. So what we've identified in here was focused on fleet charging. And so, yes, there's lots. I don't know how much it's going to affect the fleet world because that's coming from different funding sources. I actually have in my briefcase an analysis written by the Harvard Law School that gets into the weeds on this, and I read it on my flight down here. And basically, the gist of that is wait and see. This is going to get litigated. So until it works its way through the courts, it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. I would say I would not be too concerned for fleet side because, again, none of the funding sources that we had identified were part of that. Okay. So I don't think it's going to have much direct impact on this. It will have impact, I think, on funding deployment of public charging and the methodology. So, for example, we do a lot of public charging. In fact, this was originally going to be a public charging plan primarily. On our public work, we used to use this system called Justice 40, which was under the Biden administration, and that's been abolished. But this is California, and so there's the California EnviroScreen, which is a different methodology to also address the same objective, and that's being a California project that would still apply. So, and they're pretty similar. So again, I don't know how much change is going to affect here.
Well, there's an article that was given to me by our mayor, and it says California drops the clean fleets ban on diesel trucks. Is that what you were referring to? Yes. Okay, so you're saying that that's actually not something that we need to worry about on this end here?
Yeah, that if I haven't read the article, but I have a feeling it was. I mean, the big news.
It was connected to a Biden initiative the Environmental Protection Agency failed to approve waivers for them before President Donald Trump took office. So. Yeah,
and I think I'm not a lawyer. I'm a planner. My understanding is that's really specific to the private sector fleets, which were challenging the regulation.
Okay.
And so what my understanding is CAR basically said, rather than litigate this, because they knew they were going to get challenged, and they had the administration's back, so they figured CAR said, fine, we'll rescind it, and just, it's still focusing on priority fleets, which are public agencies.
So my other questions have to do with City of Angels Camp. That's who I'm representing. So I just needed some clarity because it was a little confusing in looking even at this presentation. So we have fire, police, and public works. So are they having to charge at the PD, City Hall, the old Napa building property, and the Utica Park? Or are they going to have charging stations at the fire department and out at where Public Works is?
So we just prioritize 4 sites, so out of those total sites. So the top 4 sites, one was the City Hall, which is shared with the PD, and I know there were some plans maybe PD will move out at some point.
That's not happening right now.
So those charges will accommodate any of those needs that will move out of the property, and any vehicles that will take that area for the City of Angels Camp. And also, so the report talks about how many chargers are needed where. Kind of thing, I think we did analyze more into it, but the top 4 chargers we kind of went more into detailed drive, where we kind of came up with total cost needed for how many chargers, which was the City Hall and the police department. We went to the police department, just, okay, if they move, if these chargers are there, that could be used for other city vehicles to charge them.
I just don't know how it's going to work with Public Works being out off-site and they have to leave their trucks at Utica Park overnight. I'm not sure how this is working, and maybe I'm misunderstanding. That's why I needed clarity on that.
So Utica Park was just a public charging.
Okay, so Utica and Napa are just public.
Napa could be shared where we understood from the stakeholder meetings that for the Napa building, there's a lot of vehicles that go over there during the day, and that could charge those vehicles out there when they're there for a couple of hours or 3 4 hours. Those charges are available.
Okay.
But the majority of the charging will happen on this, which we prioritize just on City Hall and PD, that one side.
Okay, so the second issue is that we just allowed our police department, our officers to take vehicles home. That's part of the perk. And so if they're driving to Turlock and back, I don't know how that's all gonna work. So I'm just giving you that information. So that's a new thing that we're allowing our officers to take vehicles home. And we also have fire department vehicles that go home. So like our fire chief's down in Copper, he has to drive back and forth. So that's just something I'm just giving that information to you so you can figure out a plan for that. But that was another one. And then I think you addressed the Arnold thing. Okay, I think that's. Oh, the U.S. Department of Energy. I was like, well, we'll see if that comes through. The other thing too was on CPPA. So we have a JPA with CPPA on how we get some of our power. Are you going to address this? Okay,
Yes.
Because I noticed in here there was this whole thing about PG&E. So we're looking at possibly not having PG&E supply the power and having CPPA. So I'll let you address that.
Yeah. So I think I brought the item either in December or November and asked the board if they were okay with me working with CPPA. We're looking at regional hubs. So on CPPA, you have the fairgrounds, you have multiple water districts and multiple, government agencies. So we're going to try to look at these issues from a regional standpoint and see if we can set up regional stations for charging of multiple agencies' fleets. So I will be bringing an update back to this council.
Well, I was talking about the PG&E EV fleet program.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to try to address all of those.
Great.
They've already been meeting with CARB. We've asked how CARB will be handling extensions. They're pushing back. So we're going to try to get a regional group together to start addressing some of these issues from a rural standpoint. I did also want to update the council. We're talking about funding. We are receiving a lot of information, so we're trying to let this level off. We will be bringing back an update to the council regarding federal funding. Some of you may remember we have applied for a federal grant on the city's behalf for the Utica charging facilities. That grant is currently paused. All the applications were collected, and I'll bring back an update. But as you know, there are other state funding programs. We're still working with CARB. So I would recommend, I appreciate all of these comments, especially the driving home. We'll come back with the team, try to incorporate all of these comments and answer some of these questions and bring them back to our March meeting.
That's all.
One, just in response, we are proposing a dual port 150 kW DC fast charger, which means that it can charge a single EV at 150 kW, which is about as fast as most light-duty EVs can accept, or at least the kind of vehicles that are typically in use by fleets. Or you can charge two at 75 kilowatts, which is still pretty fast. And that's at the police department. So that would allow officers that do have take-home vehicles to charge when they come home or when they come into the station to do their paperwork. A lot of the fleets that we work with are experimenting with take-home charging programs as well, and it varies wildly from agency to agency because there's a lot. It gets pretty technical, but there are opportunities to do that some agencies are excited about, others no way. So it really varies.
Yeah.
But one of our recommendations is shared charging between multiple agencies. And so that's one of the sort of strategic recommendations that we include. So yes, we would strongly encourage multiple agencies to share each other's DC fast chargers because they're very expensive, but they offer a lot of benefit and they're on common roads.
And then also a little bit on the PG&E side, the report talks about the PG&E incentive program because what they have is that they cover the electrical upgrades up to the meter, PG&E, and they provide incentives on getting vehicles which are light duty, actually medium and heavy duty vehicles as well. They cover some cost on the vehicle procurement, also charging infrastructure, and also electrical upgrades up to the meter. that will be from the region.
Are there any other questions from the board? Scott?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in the or else. With the City of Angels right now, we have a fire department building that can't even house all of our men and our equipment. Our city is operating out of a portable trailer, and we have some sites that can accommodate more permanent structures. And we're in the process of doing a site plan and our site use analysis, and it's going to take years to figure this stuff out, to get it constructed. And so if we were to implement something like this and put these charging stations in at a very high price, that kind of ties us up and locks us down. So I don't see us being able to go forward with this plan in the foreseeable future, quite frankly. And then another concern I have is we have PSPSs. They can last 3, 4, 5, 7 days, worst case. And those are during times of emergency. What happens to our fleet when we can't charge them and we need them the most? So I've got some issues with this whole program, but as far as the implementation goes, I see it to be very problematic, and so I'm kind of asking, or else what? If we don't do this, what happens?
Great question. First of all, we do have a chapter, it's an appendix that does discuss how to provide backup power. Typically, most of our fleets have hour or day-long interruptions. You mentioned like a week-long interruption. Obviously, that's a big deal. So I don't know of any systems that can handle that at a reasonable cost. You can do it with a massive solar array, but as you pointed out, you're a fiscally constrained organization, and that's probably not going to fly. You do have time, and so by 2035, you won't be able to buy ICE vehicles in the state of California for light duty under the executive. So the purpose of the plan is to pave the way to get there between now and then, and that may mean at the tail end of it, the City of Angels Camp's fleet is mostly light duty vehicles, which is not mandated to electrify under a specific time frame like the Advanced Clean Fleet does for the medium and heavy duty. What I would recommend is collaboration with the county and potentially use of these public chargers on an interim basis until you're in a position to do it. But if you're building new facilities, that's definitely the most cost-effective time to add the electrical infrastructure to power the chargers. Because the big cost isn't the chargers themselves, it's bringing the power to power those chargers. And so you're going to have to do that anyway when you build a new facility.
Are there any other questions from the board? I have one, and it kind of piggybacks off of Scott's, because that's what I was worried about too with PSPS or even wildfire power shutoff. Are there funding mechanisms to support solar backup batteries for these programs, or are we gonna have to look into other funding for like generators? Which then kind of defeats the whole purpose, but like a generating backup plan. And these funding sources, do they have other opportunities to seek funding for that as well? Like battery, microgrids, battery storage to keep these going? Or is that another source of funding that we're gonna have to research?
First of all, I want to thank you for asking that question, because you're the first of our clients to actually ask that question. It's a great question. We're starting to see a surge in interest in this very topic. And in fact, we're doing a project right now for SLOCOG, San Luis Obispo COG, looking at resiliency for EV charging infrastructure. Because we did their charging infrastructure plan a couple of years ago, and now they're like, okay, we're having PSPS events of a week long and massive wildfires. So how do we harden our charging infrastructure and our EV operations to address that? And so I'm guessing one of the recommendations that's going to come out of that is addressing exactly what your question is. I think before we finalize the plan, we should see what we can look into to see if there is anything. Because I haven't seen it, but we haven't been asked that question before. So
okay, is that something that we could at least get into the appendix of even like recognizing that we need, however, whether it's resilient or Because Scott brings up a good point, like, this is all fine and dandy until we've got a problem with the wildfire or massive PSPS outages.
Yes, we'll be taking all these comments back to the team. We'll see how we can incorporate them and, like he said, reach out to San Luis Obispo and see what they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Gary?
Yeah, it kind of brings me to part of my question, which related somewhat to that. We have a number of county vehicles, not only sheriff's office, but public works vehicles, probation, HHS, that go from county offices here up to Arnold and up the mountains here, which, as you know, takes a lot of vehicle charge to get up there. And once we get into public works and their vehicles have to go up there and do the work that are up there, I don't know, I'm looking at how you prioritized these sites and requirements for them. And I see that the Arnold Library has 10. And I'm assuming that's because of the number of vehicles, but it's not prioritized. So if we don't put something up there, and we were talking earlier about Tesla ones, the public ones, but still that you have to use a credit card to charge or whatever the costs are. I'm thinking maybe we ought to really look a little bit, at least putting a few chargers up there to begin with, and prioritize because of the number of vehicles that go up there and the amount of charge it takes to get up there, and then to find out that they're stuck up there and calling that we're stuck and there's nowhere to charge. And so it's just a comment that I have. And then what she was bringing up about a lot of times up there because of different fires or weather or whatever, the power goes off and you're stuck, you need to charge, and if there's no backup of some way to charge those vehicles, then we're gonna have to send other vehicles up to get them to bring them back. So.
Is there an exemption for emergency vehicles?
Under ACF there is, yes.
Okay, so some of the fleet that both city and county have, we could get, if the emergency response, we don't need to worry, we can delay that even further. We don't need to worry about those.
Correct. There aren't, right now, there's none of the sheriffs and police that we work with are happy with what the industry has provided. They don't meet their needs under the EVs. We keep waiting, but it hasn't happened yet. But under ACF, it's not even mandated.
Okay.
So specialty vehicles like snow plows and fire engines have very intense duty cycles and unpredictable duty cycles, making them very challenging use cases for electrification. One thing I want to point out, which one of our engineers had to deliver a document to a client uphill and burned out his battery on the way up and then got it all back on the way home. So he was kind of delighted. So gravity can help when you have.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure it can. If you're out of a charge, you still have to go up because you haven't got there yet for whatever reason.
But one of the other things that could play into this, and it may delay some of the even vehicles being built, is what's going on with China and Mexico right now with the tariffs that the president has embarked. And so that could not only drive costs up, but production down for a while. And so you just keep an eye on that, what's happening with that, because sure, a lot of the things going into these chargers or even the vehicles is manufactured in either one of those two countries. So.
Are there any other questions, feedback? This is a draft presentation, and it will be brought back to us. And this is a fluid document because we all recognize there's a lot of changes happening. We started this prior to all of this going on. We originally weren't thrilled about it, but with the state mandate, we needed to move forward with this. And both entities expressed interest, so they had a game plan. So if there's not any other feedback. Okay.
On the changes that are all the suggestions that we've given, when you are making any changes in this document, is there any way to notate that so that when we get the new document, it's so long. Like, we can just go to those sections maybe. Sorry.
Thank you. In the meantime, if the jurisdictions have a question, you go through Aaron. Because I know there's a lot of changes at that level too. Okay. With that, this is just to move forward, information, no action at this time. Okay, right? Okay. And thank you both for being here.
Public comment?
Yes. Is there any public comment? Sorry. Since there was no action, it threw me off.
None online.
Are there any, none online? Okay. Thank you for your time that you put into this. We appreciate it, and you guys coming up to Calaveras to give the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I leave, I just want to leave you with one thought, and that is we've been working on these things since 2018, I think. It's our first one. And in the very first one, we were during a huge amount of change in our industry and because of technology and also because of regulations. It's changing even faster now. So it's very difficult to come up with a plan that addresses long-term conditions because we know those conditions are going to continuously change in about every way possible. So just something to be aware of, and that's just how it is. Sorry.
Actually, I have one question. Has any government agency been successful in bringing this to fruition?
So a lot of our earlier clients have started down the road in electrification, and it's not an easy transition because of a lot of variables. So I would say success is limited to certain vehicle types and certain types of uses. So, for example, the F-150 Lightning has been a very popular vehicle among many of our clients because it's a pickup truck that can do a lot of things. In fact, it can do a lot of things that its ICE equivalent, the F-150, can't. So that's a good example of one. Sheriffs and police have not been happy. And in fact, a lot of them started with hybrids and plug-in hybrids, and now they're going back to ICE vehicles. So we're seeing success in certain areas, but not, I wouldn't say yet across the board, but none of our clients have fully electrified their entire operations yet. There just isn't enough supply of all the different kinds of vehicles that a typical municipal fleet needs to electrify with.
Right, so it seems like we're trying to hit a moving target, and and we're putting a lot of time and money into this, and we don't know answers. We don't know whether federal funding sources are going to be available. We don't know what type of vehicles will be available, or if or when, if ever, they'll satisfy the demand or the needs that we have. So I guess my question is, why are we continuing to put this time and money into it other than that it's a state mandate? And it comes back to my initial question that you didn't really answer is, what if we don't do this, or what?
Well, there are hard parts. There are harder parts than others. So we typically recommend, before the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule came along, we said focus on the light-duty vehicles because there are a lot of very suitable light-duty EV models for fleet use. And if you look at your numbers, 80% of the county's fleet is light-duty. Then Advanced Clean Fleet Rule came along, which had specific targets, and that shifted the focus onto heavy-duty, which is unfortunate because the cost delta between a diesel and a electric vehicle is much greater for an EV than on a light duty. So basically the state is forcing you to electrify the most expensive parts of your fleet first, which if I was a fleet manager, I would be very frustrated with because that's going to eat up my budget too quickly. But unfortunately, that is the mandate. We're trying to help you comply with the regulations. I don't feel as a non-attorney qualified to answer the question as to how are we going to be impacted if we don't comply. My job as a planner is to figure out how to comply.
Well, we're doing the best we can, right?
That's all you can do.
And Monica is online if we do want legal, but I don't know if she wants to be put on the spot, but we do have the attorney here for those of you that don't realize Monica is online tonight as well.
Hello, and I can just chime in quickly, and I think that, our consultants are smart not to practice law without a license, but this is really an interesting period in the state of California and nationally, as you have identified during your comments. We really are in such an unprecedented time of uncertainty, more so than we were even during the first Trump administration. I just know for some of the other COGs within the Valley, we are working with our advocates back in DC on a daily basis to try and figure out how all of the president's actions are going to implicate funding that's supposed to flow to the United States, to the state of California. And we also do know that a lot of these climate initiatives are coming from our current governor and his administration and things that he's pushing. He has 2 years left in his administration. We also have acknowledgement by several of the state agencies that while this is a push for the state of California to address vehicle mile traveled, greenhouse gas emissions, air quality, all of those things, we really do lack the infrastructure to bring a lot of these things to fruition in the timetable that has been established. So all of the comments that have been made here are really pertinent. There are things that have been identified. We're still working on solutions. So it's nice that, we have consultants and we have a plan in place for when the infrastructure and other things become available.
Yeah. Thank you, Monica. Okay. Okay. Any other comments, dialogue with Friday? No? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Can you bring, next time you come, can you bring like a charger with you?
There are portable chargers. Yeah, so not a bad thing for a fleet to have.
Thank you. Drive safe. Okay, so we will move on from that. That's not an action item, and we will go into, and I did public comment, right? Yeah. We'll go into item 18, which is, I'm going to turn it over to Gay, but I'll read out the item. County Board of Supervisors seek input on a slogan for the Calaveras County Department of Public Works, Clean California, Keep Calaveras Clean project. So, Gay, this is your item.
Well, you bailed on me.
I put the
No,
presentation in front of you too.
I took this item off. It was on the Board of Supervisors agenda last meeting. And I did take it off because I felt, one, we're a partnership with Public Works, and they're looking at this item for some slogans for the California Clean Air. And I thought bringing it to the COG, since we're such a diverse group, we've got two Board of Supervisors members. We have 2 members from the city. We have 3 public members that are spread out from Moke Hill to Valley Springs on the west side, and Tim going up to Arnold, that we are diverse. And so we would have, if we could get some input from us on what we felt was, there's 4 items on here that they came up with, 4 slogans, if you turn the page, that they came up with, and maybe if we'd come up with one, or if we could give our opinion on which one of these that we felt as a whole, as a COG board, diverse as we are, at least it would give some input from the entire county itself, and the representation that's there here at COG for that. So if anybody has any comment, or they want to put in for a new one, or I'm open to any of it, anything that has to say anything about Calaveras and keep Calaveras clean, anything other than keep angels clean. No, I'm open. I don't know. I just thought I would bring it to us because, again, we're diverse and we're looking at all aspects of the county, all different areas of the county here. So, and then it will go back to the board, and we can at least have our opinion if we have one.
Oh, she must. So I wrote one down.
You wrote one down?
I did.
Well, let's hear it. That's good.
It says, "We care, keep Calaveras clean."
We care, keep Calaveras clean.
It's more inclusive. It's not telling you what to do.
I like it.
I'm just saying.
I like the we care. I like the we care part. I think that's a good one.
So it would be number 2 with just we care added onto it. We care, keep Calaveras clean.
There you go, number 2.
Yeah? Anyone else? Here's your opportunity. if it's branded and it's in there, you're gonna see that slogan probably on our buses and in our cars and our public works vehicles, so. Okay, did we all agree on that? We all agree we care? Okay, so that will be what I will bring it to the board. I don't care, keep it clean.
It's just feedback. We just wanted to make sure we were including this board.
Yeah,
in
I
that.
just wanted to make sure we had it, and because of, again, we're diverse here, and it's all different areas of the county, so, okay. I will bring that up when it comes back to the board next week.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 19, which is council reports. So council reports are anything that is good for the good of the order that you think would be beneficial in sharing, or anything that you have done on behalf of the COG in the public. So I will start with Caroline.
So we had our council meeting last night. One of the big things that came out of that is we had our public hearing for our Prop 218 water, wastewater rates. So we moved forward in approving that, and also with a resolution with a slight change on the Utica pass-through language. And then we got an update about the park. It will be open in April of this year, April 1st, but we said, how about April 2nd? And so, and then we had, let's see, and then we approved the contract, the employment contract for our new city administrator, Pamela. She's gonna be changing her name to Gabriel, so Pamela. So we're excited about onboarding her. So she'll be starting March 4th or 5th? 3rd, March 3rd. Thank you. So, and anything I missed, Scott?
Gary?
Yeah, Carolyn, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony yesterday.
Oh, right, we did.
Yeah, we did, for the monuments and the wayfinding signs that are out there. And it was wonderful. It was well attended. Caltrans had a number of people there. The city had a number of people there. We had 4 supervisors there. And so it went very well, those monuments, and I've heard nothing but good things about those monuments. People are very happy. It gives them a sense of pride for their communities. And since then, over the course of the last 24 hours, I've had at least 4 emails asking why their communities didn't get a monument. No, I'm not kidding you. Why their communities, they brought up different communities. And the 7 that were picked that we had, it was kind of we only had so much money, and we had enough for 7 monuments. And I was very lucky in my district that I got 2 of the 7. So it was split up to the other, but they had to be decisions on a lot of different things and the requirements for them. So, but there is a second round supposed to be coming up, and that's what I've told them, that there's a second round if we become eligible for those grants, that those communities could be listed on there. And there's a lot of public outreach that was for those monuments. And next time I will email them, if we do get the grant, when those public meetings come up and outreach, that they'll be, at least on the list to be told to show up and give their opinion on why their communities should have the same type of monument. But they all want one now, so. But it was a good ceremony, and the monuments are well liked by everybody, so.
Pat?
I'll just say, we like our signs a lot over in Valley Springs. I think they turned out really well.
Scott?
There's been a lot of talk lately about the Firewise program, and I'm wondering if we have funding sources through the COG. That's an avenue I didn't think to explore before. We have a number of different people interested in doing it, and I understand you can do this as a small community, as little as like maybe 6 houses or something like that, all the way up to citywide or countywide if you get really ambitious. But given the difficulties we have with homeowners insurance, that might be something worth looking into.
Yes.
And
we also just completed the evacuation and assessment plan. So you already have a plan to use as a document in your application.
That'd be great.
Okay.
So the more information we can get, I think the better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trevor?
I have nothing to report.
Well, welcome, both of you. And I should have done introductions earlier for you. Scott and Trevor. Our attorney is Monica. She's been with us for a couple of years, and she's amazing. She keeps us in line. So she usually joins via video. So I too was at the ribbon cutting yesterday. I did not speak, but Caroline and Gary gave 2 wonderful speeches yesterday. So they were very good. Okay, we'll move on to staff reports. Ann?
I have nothing to report.
Ann?
Nothing to report in addition to the report that was in your packet. So.
Nothing to report.
And with that, we will adjourn the COG. The next COG board meeting is March 5th, 2025 at 5:30 right here in this room. At this time, is there any board member or staff member that needs to take a break before we go into CTA? Yeah, I'm not seeing anything, so Aaron will go right into CTA. Hey.
Good night, Micah.
Is everyone, are you guys good? Pat, are you okay? Okay. Okay, we'll move into CTA. We'll move on to consent agenda. We have multiple consent agenda items on the agenda. Is there any board member that wishes to pull a consent agenda item? Okay, seeing none, is there any public comment? None in the room, and shaking her head no. We'll come back to the board. Is there a motion to approve the consent?
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Caroline. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Gary. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, 601. Okay, we'll move on to regular agenda. Next on the agenda is public comment. Comment should be limited to the items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda. Are there any public comment? Seeing none in the room, no online, we'll move on to item number 6, which is fiscal year 2024-25 mid-year performance report. And I will move it to Erin.
Hello again,
You're
board.
up.
So the purpose of this mid-year report is to provide a comprehensive overview of some recent, of the recent performance of transit system and key metrics. You've hopefully had a chance to review it. You'll see that our ridership continues to grow. We saw a 17% overall increase in ridership this year. The fixed route services increased by actually 20%. Dial ride increased by itself 6%. Which we're happy to see, of course. Our on-time performance remains pretty solid at 98%. I think it deviated by 1% from last year. It's well above our contracted norms. We did experience road work and construction throughout this kind of 6-month time period, but it didn't seem to impact our on-time performance. And when we talk about our growth in ridership, although our dial ride did increase, I will note that our Wednesday dial ride actually decreased, which was odd, but the other dial rides increased to compensate for it, so that worked out. The transit department is operating obviously within its budget with a 4% overall cost increase, which we attribute to the liability insurance costs that we covered last year, or spoke about in, I want to say November, if I'm correct. And that revenue on this report, if you'll notice, even though our ridership went up, you'll see that our revenue is tracking a little bit down. I just wanted to make the note that there is still some fare revenue that's yet to be collected for the 6-month time period. And also the advertising didn't include, because I pulled this report and put it together, obviously in advance. I had it for TAC meeting and then prepared it in advance for this. And I did not have December advertising rates yet. So whereas you see advertising for the 6-month time period at $13,000, when I include the December advertising revenue that we received, it's actually $16,264. So we're kind of right on track with where we were last year. And then the interest, you may have noticed, maybe not, between my report and mid-year budgets, my interest reflects much lower, but I didn't have the second quarter interest included in mine, whereas she did. So just to kind of let you guys know about those differences. But if you had any questions or comments, we do have the short-range transit plan coming up. I hope to have the RFP out in the next month or so. That'll help us look at efficiencies and see where transit maybe has more opportunity to be more efficient. We'll be able to survey our riders, get some more community feedback on what they see a need is for transportation. And then I also hope to do some more marketing and maybe an annual to biannual survey is kind of what I'm playing with for our customers or riders. So that's what I got.
Are there any questions,
So
Gay?
you're gonna hand our riders a survey when they get on the bus?
Yeah.
And then they're supposed to fill it out? Do they get a free ride? They don't have to pay to fill out the survey?
We can look at that option, but yeah, it's good to survey. So.
Okay, all right. Okay, I was just wondering. That's the idea. They will be handed a survey to fill out while they're on.
Yeah, well, the short range transplant itself is a months-long process. They'll have a consultant involved. They'll do interviews and surveys, but as CTA, my interest is in starting doing an annual survey kind of riders just to see where there's room for improvement or what they like that we're doing. We just haven't done that consistently yet, and I think that's something that would be valuable.
Just saying, a number of the increase that we have, why the increase is high school kids. So I'm just curious what that survey is gonna look like and what
Might need to do a
what the
QR
answers are gonna be on it, so.
We usually have a digital format too, so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Gary.
Are there any other questions from the board on the mid-year performance report? Okay. Is there any public comment? Okay. Thank you, Erin, for putting this together. You've definitely seen an increase in usership, and I know that had a lot to do with the collaboration with the high school too. So, okay. We'll move on to the next item, which is item number 7, paratransit service. Cynthia, you're up. How are you tonight?
Good evening, everyone. Cynthia Lawrence, Calaveras Connect, the paratransit services contractor. I have a few things to report, but nothing too big. We did do our annual Christmas party where we celebrate all the wonderful people that we have on our staff. And it got canceled due to the weather in Angels. They actually lost power at the restaurant we were going to. So we just actually had it in January, and it was really fun. So we still had Christmas in January. It was nice. For January, for our focuses, we focus on refresher training for all the drivers and staff. And then we, of course, our safety awareness. Sorry, the I is not working here. So all of our safety awareness programs that we go throughout the year, we start in January over again. And those are dealing with on-time performance checks and also with basic customer service and safety awareness pieces. So we did start our pre-trip assessments this month, but that'll be reported later. And then our bus stop and shelters, we did start going through them for assessments to just sort of see how are they wearing, are there any repairs that need to be done, all the things that are at our bus stops, whether it be lights or schedule holders, things like that. So all of that starts up in January, and we've been doing that. Of course, our ridership is going up, which is nice. We're seeing that upward trend. The high school students are sort of leveling out. We're just under 500 students. It ranges between 580, 480 and 470. So we're in that range. And of course, our dial-a-ride is up slightly. And then West Point sort of took a little bit of a downturn, but that's because of, we have a couple people that left the service and moved out of the area. So we've been focusing on West Point, and getting the word out. The two ladies that ride religiously because they want the service to stay, they go out and they help us and talk to the people in the community. So it's really nice to have that support with them. Other than that, I don't really have much else. If anybody has any questions. No. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Somebody's speaking because I'm not getting the thing.
Me, sorry. Okay, we'll move on to staff report. Ann?
No report.
Ann? Melissa? Hey, with that, we will adjourn, and the next CTA meeting is March 5th, 2025 at 5:30 right here in this room. Thank you, everyone.